Okay, guys, last group.
Okay, so it's
Let's
fine.
continue the technique.
I'll do the computer.
I don't know the introduction because you did it.
Okay, fine. Hello.
Hi, Bennett.
Hi. So today we're going to talk about the English language and how it got to the United States.
No. In the middle. Okay. The volumes.
You know what I can do too? I can put on like a big screen.
So it doesn't take long if you put the screw.
Okay.
Okay.
Just put it in the projector.
Can I just
Yeah,
connect
just
it?
take it out. Just take it out. Plug it up. It's coming. Okay,
So we interviewed Miss Archer for the.
She's basically gonna explain the questions, but we'll start tomorrow. Like, it's supposed to be.
It's stuck.
Wait 1 second.
It's thinking.
What do you mean it's thinking?
Wait for it.
Oh,
There.
okay.
See?
Yeah, it's
How did English come into my country? It came through colonizers. It came to my nation long time ago. And during the imperialist era, they wanted new lands, new opportunity, freedom of religion, opportunity to get more resources, and encountered the indigenous peoples. There were many other tribes that spoke different languages, even within the same region, many different languages, different culture. The native peoples were taught to speak English, originally through trade, and so they learned how to communicate to trade goods, and to help actually the colonists settle in a little bit. And later, as the colonists came and overwhelmed the country, so to speak, they were taught in schools and they were on reservations. They ended up on reservations and were taught in schools there to try to acculturate them to the new culture of the United States of America. So they were taken from being multiple different governments and tribes in each region to become embedded within the American country that we know today. Some of the educational processes were a bit on the harsh side, or quite harsh actually. But yeah, many of them speak English almost to the point where they have forgotten their native tongue, native language. English is not the only language spoken in the country today. We're becoming incredibly more tolerant and we're becoming more aware of the global environment of the world. I know that in my region in particular, it's on the northwest, it's north of California, there's a high concentration of Spanish speakers, and so even on instructions and warning signs and everything, it'll be English and then Spanish. And many of my students were fluent in both languages. Whereas here it's unique because students are fluent in usually 3 or more languages. Over there, many more bilingual students are coming into the fore. Instructions again and labels, signs are becoming more and more bilingual where I'm from. Okay. Is English taught alongside other languages? Actually, I had a coworker I used to work with at my high school that he put his daughter in a bilingual education program, and he was predominantly Caucasian orient. He was a really awesome guy. He was about 6'7", 6'7", so he was kind of a giant. And his daughter, again, like just Caucasian descent, was being put into a Spanish-English bilingual school. My favorite teacher at that school too was one of the Spanish teachers. She's of Argentinian descent, and her daughter's bilingual, raised bilingual, and her granddaughter, they're also fostering that same type of dynamic. Most of the schools, it's usually English, and a secondary language is usually taught in the high school, but it's becoming more and more prevalent that they're fostering more of a bilingual atmosphere, a multilingual atmosphere in the elementary and primary schools to foster fluency. And it's really neat to see that transition to come. had come to the fore, because as I was saying earlier with our native peoples, their languages were kind of eradicated with English dominating over all, whereas now we seem much more encouraging of the multicultural, multilingual atmosphere, although English is still much more dominant in our culture. Where is English used? It's used in schools, governments, societal circles, etc. Again, like most, it's the vox populi, it's the common language that's used about. But again, you'll have, even in the coffee shops and social areas, you'll have like clusters in Mohammed that they focus on learning sign language and becoming fluent in sign language, or learning conversational Spanish or French. Obviously, I never practiced the French. What other ways English influenced people of that country, of my country? I think that it's brought to the fore, Native American cultures, like what was there before the colonists came, were much more open and sharing of the resources, and they weren't very much into the material goods. There were even some cultures where they were known, like individuals were known as being more popular in society, and their status was raised by giving a
So
Did
the
you put a
next
video?
one. No. How did English come to the United States?
So basically, how did English come to the United States? As Ms. Archer said that the English had colonized the United States, and this happened during the 17th century, basically, and it came from the North America. And also some categories got involved in this, like the Germans, the Irish, and the Spanish people. And the colonization came basically from the United Kingdoms. Okay, so is English the only language currently spoken in the US? No, it's English is not the only language spoken in the United States, as because only 80% speak English, while it's then followed by the Spanish speakers, which is 12.4% again, and then the Indian, Europeans, and then the Asians and the Pacific Islands. So there are many other languages too, which is spoken in the United States, which is basically 0.9%.
No, he said wait.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, so where is English used in the US? So English is basically used anywhere you go in public in the United States. For example, they're used in bank, gas stations, schools, scientific research, community service. There are also special kind of formal and informal words that they're used, such as sport event, churches, auction, and business meeting, and more. And of course, English is used at home. So, in which other ways has English influenced the people of the country? So, English language have developed them to create their own identity. For example, wherever you go in the world, they will always notice Americans from the accent and from speaking like the way of them speaking in English. And
Okay, so I've got a sample poem of. It's a famous poem written by Shakespeare, and he was a famous poet and a playwright. He was born and raised in Stratford, Avon-upon, which is a city in England. He got married at the age of 18 to a woman called Annie Hathaway, and they had 3 kids. One of them was called Suzanne, and the other were twins called Julie, Hamlet, and Judith, which are also 2 famous plays that he wrote.
What did you put it?
It's kind of funny, grab your attention. And yeah, he has
Before
written.
you start, Dash, could I just say, we're probably going to go over time, but that's why I just asked you to correctness and spend a few extra minutes.
So he has written over 38 plays and 154 sonnets, and he is and was known as the greatest and the greatest writer in the English history of all time. So this is one of his favorite poems that he wrote. I'm going to read it. Over hill, over dale, through bush, through briar, over park, over pale, through flood, through fire. I do wander everywhere, swifter than the moon's sphere, and I severe the fairy queen, do her orbs upon the green. The
Wait, guys, wait.
cowslips
Be polite.
call her
They listen to your
engineers
presentation.
be, in their gold coats spots you see. Those be rubies fairy favors, in those freckles live their savors. I must go seek some dewdrops here, and hang a pearl in every cowslip here.
I'm
So,
sorry, can I ask a question?
Yes.
William Shakespeare lived in London.
no, he was born and raised in Stratford, but he lived in London. I said he was born and raised.
Okay, what does it have to do with the United States?
Can you ask the question?
Yeah, it's a good question.
Next.
Okay.
Next.
No, I'm gonna say the movie.
Okay.
So what this poem is about is basically a fairy tale. A fairy going around and spreading dewdrops on flowers. And the cowtail is basically a type of a flower, and he's spreading the dewdrops on. So the fairy is spreading the dewdrops. And Shakespeare calls cowtails the queen's pensioners because literally it means the queen is giving them something, much like getting a pension at work. And the poem is basically about the fairy serving his fairy queen. So that's the meaning of the poem.
No, this is
And
what
we
we
already
did
showed
in
the
interview.
And
So in conclusion, we think that English is a universal language that has united many people. It's a fairly easy language to learn, and it has had a great deal of contribution to many other languages.
and that's
Very
our
well.
Thank you guys. Can I ask you to leave your notes with your name on it on the table? So you can leave your notes with
Your
your name on the
computer.
table. So I'll give
Ah.
you
Thank you.
Bye guys.
Thank you.
Okay. Turn on the back.
Bye.
Thanks guys.
Yeah.
Okay, bring them tomorrow then. Or
That's a great.